When people try to twist words or misinterpret intentions, what I gathered from that situation was that Gervonta "Tank" Davis came across as more of a hater than anything else. He has often been accused of criticizing others instead of giving credit where it is due. The situation unfolded in a way where Davis seemed unwilling to simply acknowledge Terence Crawford's greatness, and instead chose to stir controversy with dismissive comments. He made remarks on social media that drew attention, and those remarks revealed the larger story that would follow. After Terence "Bud" Crawford's dominant win over Canelo Alvarez, which sent shockwaves across the entire boxing community, Gervonta Davis suggested that he himself could take down Crawford. He went on to social media platform X to express his confidence and boldness, even claiming that he would step up without hesitation to challenge Crawford. Davis insisted that his doubters would be proven wrong if they saw him in action, as he promised to train harder and push himself further to make that fight happen. According to Davis, defeating Crawford would not only silence critics, but also cement his place among the sport's elite. However, Crawford's victory over Canelo was more than just another win. It was a historic achievement that left fans, analysts, and fighters in awe. Canelo had entered the fight as a decorated champion with a record of 63 wins, 3 losses, 2 draws, and 39 knockouts. He was a 4-division champion, a 2-time undisputed super middleweight champion, and widely considered a first-ballot Hall of Famer. Crawford, who moved up in weight to face him, dismantled Canelo with composure, skill, and mastery. His performance was one of the clearest demonstrations of superiority seen in modern boxing. For many, it was a defining moment that placed Crawford among the all-time greats. Instead of joining the boxing world in celebrating this extraordinary achievement, Davis downplayed Crawford's win and positioned himself in the spotlight. His decision to take that route was met with heavy criticism. Analysts and fans believed Davis's comments were not just unnecessary, but disrespectful. They argued that even if he was reluctant to celebrate Crawford's accomplishment, the least he could have done was remain silent rather than diminish it. To many, his refusal to acknowledge Crawford's greatness made him appear arrogant and envious. Several voices in the boxing world weighed in. Bill Haney, trainer and manager of Devin Haney, commented on Davis's remarks. He brushed off Tank's claims as unrealistic, pointing out that there was no legitimate way for Davis to replicate what Crawford had achieved against Canelo. Haney argued that Davis should quit taunting fighters in higher weight divisions and focus instead on real challenges in his own category. For Haney, Tank belonged at 147 pounds and had no business talking about champions in divisions far above his natural size. He saw Tank's comments as more of a publicity stunt than a genuine ambition to fight Crawford. Analysts recalled that Davis had already spoken dismissively about Crawford before, claiming that Crawford's move up in weight to fight Canelo was about money and not about legacy. Those remarks further revealed Davis's unwillingness to give credit to one of the sport's most respected fighters. Crawford himself had shared his perspective on Davis long before this exchange. Crawford admitted that he did not care much for Davis as a person. He felt that Davis was more focused on maintaining his image and projecting arrogance than actually pursuing the toughest challenges available. Crawford said that Davis rarely took risks and often chose opponents who posed little threat. To him, Davis seemed like someone who relied on his stardom, his entourage of security guards, and the hype surrounding his name rather than proving himself consistently in the toughest fights. Crawford went as far as to say that he genuinely did not like Davis. He described him as arrogant and disrespectful, the kind of fighter who acted tough under the shield of fame, but would not behave the same way in different circumstances. Even with that disdain, Crawford acknowledged Davis's talent as a fighter. He admitted that Davis was indeed a skilled and dangerous opponent inside the ring. But Crawford could not separate the fighter from the personality, and his dislike for Tank as a person colored much of his perspective. Despite this tension, Crawford did not completely rule out the possibility of fighting Davis. He made it clear that if Davis truly wanted to challenge him, then Tank would need to step up to 147 pounds. Crawford believed that was the only way the matchup could be made fairly. To Crawford, such a fight would serve not only as a chance to put Davis's trash talk to rest, but also as another opportunity to further secure his own legacy. He repeatedly emphasized that the choice lay entirely with Davis. If Davis genuinely believed in his abilities, he would need to move up in weight and prove it inside the ring instead of talking outside of it. When asked directly whether a fight with Davis was possible, Crawford replied that it could happen if Davis truly wanted to dare to be great, just as other fighters before him had done by moving up divisions. Crawford said Davis could come up to 154 if he was serious, since Davis had even claimed that Crawford had a glass chin. Crawford responded by telling Davis to come up and test that chin for himself at 147 pounds, since Crawford could comfortably make that weight. For Crawford, the door was open, but it was up to Davis to walk through it. Boxing trainers and analysts also spoke out. Bill Haney, when asked about Davis saying he would knock Crawford out in 6 rounds, dismissed it as nothing more than ticket-selling talk. Trainer Greg Hackett praised Crawford's win over Canelo, calling it one of the defining achievements of modern boxing. He highlighted how extraordinary it was for a fighter to climb through multiple weight divisions and not just compete but dominate a champion of Canelo's stature. Hackett reminded fans that this kind of accomplishment had not been seen since legends like Bob Fitzsimmons and Henry Armstrong. Hackett emphasized that the way Crawford beat Canelo mattered. It was not a close fight or a lucky punch. It was a masterful display of control and intelligence. Crawford used his jab, footwork, and ring IQ to completely neutralize Canelo's usual strategies. Hackett described how Canelo often relied on hitting opponents on the hips and shoulders to break them down, expecting certain reactions. But against Crawford, those tactics failed. Hackett said Canelo had grown accustomed to imposing his will and intimidating opponents, but Crawford refused to be intimidated. Instead, Crawford set traps, used movement, and built what Hackett called a spider web, forcing Canelo into uncomfortable positions. Hackett concluded that Crawford's victory put him firmly among the sport's all-time greats. He argued that Crawford had nothing left to prove, and critics could no longer question his legacy. Hackett urged Crawford to ignore detractors and simply enjoy the rewards of his success, because in his eyes, Crawford had achieved the very definition of greatness. Boxing analyst DJ Rahm echoed these sentiments, praising Crawford as one of the most complete fighters the sport has ever seen. Rahm explained that Crawford's greatest strength was his adaptability. No matter what style of opponent he faced, Crawford always found a way to adjust. Against knockout punchers, defensive counter-punchers, or aggressive pressure fighters, Crawford could switch strategies seamlessly. Rahm described watching Crawford as watching an artist at work, where every adjustment was precise and every move deliberate. Rahm emphasized that Crawford's mastery of timing, distance, and angles made him nearly impossible to solve. He called Crawford a once-in-a-generation athlete whose consistency had already secured his place among the sport's greats. For Rahm, Crawford's legacy was untouchable, and his performance against Canelo only solidified that status. Other analysts also noted that despite the magnitude of Crawford's achievement, some people were still reluctant to fully acknowledge his greatness. They argued that part of this stemmed from the deep admiration fans had for Canelo, especially in Mexico, where he remained a national icon. In contrast, Crawford, as an African-American fighter, often faced bias and uneven treatment. Critics suggested that the mixed reaction to his victory reflected not just boxing rivalries, but also larger social issues such as favoritism and race, shaping how a fighter's legacy is perceived. Up-and-coming contender Hamza Shiraz also shared his admiration for Crawford, describing him as relentless and unstoppable in the ring. He noted that Crawford had proven time and again that he could overcome every challenge. For Shiraz, Crawford's dominant showing against Canelo reinforced what he already believed, that Crawford competes at a level that few fighters can ever reach. Shiraz even admitted that he could see himself facing Canelo someday, but Crawford's performance left him deeply impressed. Crawford's longtime coach Brian Bomack, MC Entire, also gave his thoughts on what lay ahead. He suggested that Crawford might not pursue a matchup with David Benavidez, despite speculation. According to MC Entire, Crawford had already accomplished more than enough and did not need to chase unnecessary risks. He believed Crawford should step back, take time off, and focus on personal priorities rather than outside pressures. MC Entire emphasized that Crawford's legacy was secure, and he had earned the right to dictate his own future. Throughout this debate, one theme remained consistent: the contrast between Crawford's undeniable greatness and Davis's controversial remarks. While the boxing community rallied around Crawford, praising his adaptability, discipline, and dominance, Davis chose a different path. Instead of celebrating or staying silent, he criticized, dismissed, and positioned himself as a potential rival. His refusal to show respect made him look like a hater to many, overshadowing his own talent and achievements. Crawford's position, however, remained clear. He was willing to face Davis if Tank stepped up to 147 pounds. He was not afraid of the challenge, but he would not chase it either. For Crawford, the ball was in Davis's court. If Tank truly wanted to prove himself, he had to back his words with actions. Until then, Crawford continued to stand as a champion who had climbed multiple weight divisions, dominated one of the greatest fighters of the era, and cemented his place among the legends of boxing. In the end, Crawford's mastery, respect from peers, and unwavering self-belief contrasted sharply with Davis's arrogance, trolling, and refusal to acknowledge greatness. The boxing world watched as the narratives played out. One man securing his legacy with actions inside the ring, and another seeking attention with words outside of it.